But very often in the story, when they die, one of their friends is there. One of their friends is with them. And in fact, one of their friends is the one who helps them get the drugs and is there giving them more drugs when they ask for it. Sometimes it's even a doctor that's there who's prescribing drugs to them. And we think to ourselves, what kind of friends are these? What kind of friends are these that are going to be with someone who's clearly risking their own life, someone endangering their life? What are they in that for? And we think about the friend, this so-called friend, just wants to be close to an important person. Maybe there's some money involved. Aristotle said the opposite of a friend is not an enemy. Because even enemies, when they confront us, when they challenge us, when they disagree with us, even that action can actually catalyze us to insist more fervently on what we think is right and to do what's right. Even enemies can get stirred up to think things through and do what's right. He said the opposite of a friend is not an enemy. The opposite of a friend is a flatterer. Someone who just flatters people. Someone who just tells people what they want to hear. Someone who just reinforces who the person is right there. He says a true friend is not going to flatter you. A true friend is going to risk being honest with you. What do you really need? What do you really need to do? How can you grow even more healthy? That's what friends do. Now, as I say, when we think about that, that may be the hardest part of friendship to practice because we've all been taught to be polite and to not say negative things to people. And we might think if we see a friend who's could be making healthier choices, could be living more fully as God's person, we think to ourselves, how can I talk to them? How can I say to them what they should be doing, who they should be? I'm just not sure if that's my role or not. We prize tolerance in our society, and in many ways, tolerance and patience are very good values. There are many situations, and we need to practice tolerance with one another. But finally, particularly when tolerance just kind of settles down into kind of a shallow kind of acceptance and blind eye, we come back to what Jesus is talking about, true friends. True friends help each other grow. True friends challenge one another to be their best. True friends reflect on the question, who is God calling us to be? And how can we more fully be that person? And so we're called to practice that kind of friendship. And as a matter of fact, that's the kind of friendship that Jesus practices with us. That's back to the gospel. Jesus says, you're not going to be my servants. I'm not going to just tell you what to do. I want us to enter into a relationship of friendship, to enjoy each other's company, to count on each other, but also to challenge one another how to live. C.S. Lewis, in one of his writings, said this. I'm not sick, by the way. I'm not sick. I just have allergy this morning, so don't worry about me. C.S. Lewis said, the 100 small decisions we make each day either draw us closer to God, either draw us closer to what God intends for us, or take us away from it. The 100 small decisions that we make each day, the conversation we have at the breakfast table, the interactions we have at work, what we do in our job, what we buy that day, what we think that day, what projects we support that day, how we interact with the world that day. The 100 small decisions that we make each day either draw us closer to what God intends us to be or farther away. And part of the role of friends then, and I'll say now we're talking about ourselves as a community of friends here at Beautiful Savior, is that we help each other ask the question, well, where is God calling me? Where is God calling you? Who does God intend us to be? What does God want us to be doing in our lives, with our families, in our workplace, in the world itself? Because that's how we actively are friends to each other, to help us think that through. Now, let me make a hop from the topic of friends to Mother's Day. Talk about Mother's Day. Because in a fairly profound way, parents, both mothers and fathers, but since it's Mother's Day, we'll talk about mothers today, are called to be friends to their children. Often there's a cautionary note that parents should be more than just friends. And usually what that means is that parents are not just there to be pals with their kids and go along with everything they say. There is a moment in which parents do need to step in and tell their kids that 8-year-olds should not be up at 3 in the morning watching cable TV, things like that. But in a deeper sense, in which Jesus is talking about, parenting is the deepest kind of friendship where you bring joy to your children, where your children know that you can count on them, and thirdly, where you really challenge your children to grow, where you really call on them to grow, where you try to awaken in them a vision that God has for them. In fact, I would say even more than that on this Mother's Day. I would say that being a parent, being a mother, is a sacramental sign, a sacramental example of God's love. In the Lutheran Church, we only have 2 official sacraments because of the way we define sacrament, Holy Communion and baptism. But parenting is a sacramental act. It's like a sacrament. Sacraments, as you remember from confirmation class and catechism, the sacrament is something that brings God's grace to us, brings God's unconditional love to us through some physical sign. So in baptism, God's love comes to us through water. In Holy Communion, God's love comes to us through the bread and the wine. And I would say in parenting, God's love comes to children through their parents, in an active way in which parents care for them. And I would also say that all of us who are parents know that we can never do it perfectly. Any mother, any father has good days and bad days. Parents live by the grace of God and by the forgiveness of God. And so we as parents have not always been perfect. Your parents were not always perfect. That's something that we say out loud as well. But really the vision, the calling is that we help our children grow. We share with them God's love. We both love them unconditionally, but also challenge them to be more each moment. It's actually that's the way someone expressed the work of Jesus. Somebody said, Jesus always loves us as we are, but Jesus never leaves us as we are. God loves us, Jesus loves us no matter what, but then continually is urging us and empowering us to step further. And so that's what we celebrate today, that Christ calls us friends. Christ is present as friends. And we live that out in our friendship, and we also live that out in families, as parents to children, and children back to parents, to the extended family. I'd like to end with a quote by Francis de Sales, who lived at the same time as Martin Luther. He was the Bishop of Geneva, Switzerland. Although because the Calvinists took over, he moved to France. But Francis de Sales wrote this. He says, "You learn to study by studying. You learn to play the lute by playing, to dance by dancing, to swim by swimming. And just so, you learn to love God and your neighbor by loving." So if you want to love God, love God. If you want to love your neighbor, and go on loving him or her more and more. Begin as a mere apprentice, and by dint of loving, you will become a master in the art. We're called today to practice love, to practice friendship. Christ says we are friends. And so first we accept that and receive it, and then we put it into work in our own lives. This we say in Jesus' name. Amen.